Hey everyone, welcome to another typology interview. We have Theo again. How's it going, bud?
Hey, it's going good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Thanks for signing up. So it's been a while, and it's nice to have you. We're gonna talk about your shadow functions a bit. We're good with that?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Okay, so um, I guess SE is your first function. Let's go over to SI, which is the shadow of SE.
hmm
Have you do you know what SI is? Do,
Um, yeah. So as far as functions go, the shadow observers cause me more trouble. It's like I can see other people using them, but at first glance, doing a thing, but I don't know how to do that thing.
right. Well, I mean, do you see yourself as organizing the sensory at all? Figuring out procedures, things that go in order?
Not unless it's absolutely necessary.
Right.
I mean, so like from what I've seen, a lot of SI like leads, things are just very important to them, which I think is where a lot of that like organizing the sensory comes from.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as being extroverted on the SE, like very few like physical things are actually important to me.
That's right. Yeah. Is there any meaning to anything in the world to you? Like any physical?
Yeah, I have two things that have like actual emotional value to me. One is a t-shirt that all of my students signed from my first teaching internship.
Mhm.
And then the second is like a little thing a friend got me off the street when I wasn't paying attention. And
What
it's
does that
it's
even mean?
it's it's like a little person, but it's like twisted out of metal wires, and it's on a skateboard. And at the top, it says my name, and then
Okay.
has like a little tiny Colombian bag on it.
And why does that have meaning for you, that object?
So it came from like my first friend that I made in Colombia. So I think that's
Okay.
part of it. And then what's funny is she decided to do a skateboard even before I decided that I liked skateboarding.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Cool. What about in terms of like your body and self-care and things like this? Are you,
I need to get better at it.
yeah? Like are you aware of your health and your, I don't know, your
Um,
physical
I
your
mean,
physical well-being?
yeah, in a sense, I am aware of it. I just don't take care of it. So, like,
Yeah.
the thing
I guess
I'm
that also goes
trying,
with sleep last a little bit too.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if I told you my eating habits, we're not going to do that because it would just be that terrible. So my commitment for 2021 with baby steps is to eat one piece of fruit a day. So, and that came
Good
from
work
my
with that.
brother-in-law. Um, so I'm trying to do that to improve my diet. With work, now that I'm always sitting at a computer, I've started trying to do push-ups every day just to like have a little bit of exercise, since mostly it's for my back, which
Yeah.
can be a pain.
Um, do you feel like you're aware of your, I don't know how deep it goes, but like your heart beating, your breaths, like
Um,
little nuances in your body that could signal that something might be going wrong or going right
mm,
or
Not usually, unless like I'm trying to meditate or focus on it.
right.
I mean, like if I notice I'm really stressed out, I'll try and pay a little more attention to those things just to like calm it
Mhm.
down a bit. But on the regular, I usually catch myself when my heartbeat's going like 100 miles an hour, but I've literally done two things in my day, and I'm like, I'm clearly rushing around for no reason,
Yeah.
which I think is probably that play blast energy just doing
Um,
its thing.
do you think you like skateboarding because you got that gift or it has nothing to do with that gift?
Actually, no. I mean, I did it a little bit when I was in college, but it was
Right.
mostly just for like getting around from A to B. But it wasn't until March when the pandemic hit that I decided to like do it as a full hobby. But I had gotten the gift, a year before then.
Hmm. All right. Um, do you have anyone in your life, I guess, that is using SI that you've recognized what SI is? Like,
So there was this one girl who I knew, who I'm pretty sure she was Savior SI, and then I'm pretty sure my mother is Savior SI.
right. Do you feel like you're overwhelming for them? Like you're causing too much chaos in the sensory?
Um, Yeah, I mean, according to them, I'm just not very observant. Like, according to my mother, the biggest complaint is that I'm just not observant. But which
Right.
is interesting that as SE because it's supposedly like sensory on a spectrum, but she's paying
Yeah.
like such detail to things that I just miss all of that.
Right. Do you also feel like maybe you're little bit messy when you're talking for them, or you're not? I don't know.
Um, no, my mom and I get along pretty good in that sense. Like we're both Savior Blast, so
Okay.
like we have that in common. So communicating is not usually an issue.
Yeah. Well, because I'm just thinking because sensory for SE is very scattered. It's not very organized, and it ends up being a little bit confusing, I guess, for SI. Like it's not ordered. It's not structured. Uh,
Yeah. So like when you like if you go off examples to support things, then you'll like I don't know why I keep popping in and out like that. But
yeah, your net's
like
bad.
yeah, my what?
Your internet's bad. Something's choking. It's all good.
Oh, yeah, that's my parents' internet. I don't know. It's crap. Sorry, more observer freakouts. But so yeah, like if I make a point and then I want to support it, I'll draw from different sensory examples here and there. But usually I can't remember that many examples, so I only give like one or two. So it's not as scattered as it could be.
Right.
But part of like just being Savior Blast, you can be a little more directed when you need to be.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you're calling out the SI for being too subjective with the sensory? Have you seen that ever happen?
Um, yes. Like I don't in my head I do it more than in real like than with words. So like I've seen two versions of what you can consider like SI. So there's SI like my mom who like literally every single thing has some sort of like deep meaning
Hmm.
and she expects everyone to have that sort of like same deep meaning with things versus I'm like meh.
Right.
And then I get called immature. So like if it's so like me not being SI is like in a way almost immaturity to her
Okay.
because like I just so don't value things. And then on the other side is like you remember like from how Dave and Chan talk about the SI fact report. I have
Okay.
seen that, but from somebody I believe is Savior NE. But it's interesting because what you'll see him do like I remember we were all like sitting around like it was back when I was in college in his like home church sort of thing and he has like 50 Bibles, but rather than just being like owning a bunch of Bibles like most people and then just having like different translations or things here and there that they like, he could literally tell you almost every single fact about every single Bible, like who wrote it, why they wrote it, the church they came from, the denomination, you
Okay.
know, what their thought process was behind like all of these things, but for like 20 Bibles literally in a row. And I'm like, that's impressive.
Right. Yeah. That's pretty narrowed down.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Gray wants to know what it's like having Savior Blast and Savior Control with Demon OI.
Yeah. Well, that one's interesting. So, like, I am Savior Blast with masculine NI, but I'm also feminine DE with that
Yeah.
FE. So, I don't really like controlling the tribe, but I've noticed a lot if it's just casual conversations with friends, not butting in the conversation to interject and make my own point and steer the conversation slightly one way or another, really, really difficult.
Yeah.
It's been a complaint my entire life against me is that I can be like too dominating in a conversation. So I
Right.
mean, I guess there's that, but I've also like learned if I need to like directly like go at someone and be like, you need to do this or do that. Like I've developed that, so I can also just flat out tell people what to do.
Cool. I mean, I mean, like, if you see that void, will you step into it? Just to follow up on that a little bit. Like, do you feel like you're the one responsible to step in?
Yeah. So normally when it comes to like being in charge of people, usually I just wait to see if somebody else wants to do it. But if
Yeah.
like no one else is stepping up, then I will. But a lot of times what happens, at least in like the jobs I've had, is not so much that people aren't willing to step up. They just literally are so bad at their job that I just want it done. but I can't do all of the work. Now this is when this was mostly like going back to college when like I did like fast food jobs and stuff where like people are just so bad at working that it's just like we need to get this done before midnight, so this has to change.
Yeah. Okay, really good. So let's move on to FI, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's the shadow of FE, right, for you?
Right. Yeah.
So do you see, are you aware of your priorities? Do you see that you have priorities, things that are important to you? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I could rank almost everybody in my life in level of importance. As far as things go, I can rank those as well, but that usually has more to do with NI, like the importance of, ordering what I want in order to get something in the future. I mean, the follow through can be iffy, but I can rank it, sure. Funny thing, when I was a kid, every year when I black out, can you hear me?
No.
Oh, I hate this house. Okay, so when I was a kid, every year for Christmas, I used to write, like Christmas list to Santa of things I wanted, right? But I would make a list, I kid you not, of at least 20 things. It's being mild. And they would all be ranked from 1 to 20 in the order that I wanted it. And I would revise it once a week. And every week, maybe every day, I would revise it and then send it to everybody in my family.
Okay. All right. I mean, so you are aware of what you like then too, I guess. That's
yeah. Save your feeling, I guess, helps with that.
Right. So how does that work? Like, how is that on the spectrum then?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is, like, as much as I like a bunch of things, most things that I like aren't like tied to my personality. Right? Like the fact that I like pizza isn't really that important to me. It's just,
yeah, I guess it's sensory too, pizza, I guess. It's not really,
or anything, it could be like I like Star Wars or I like skateboarding or these things, right? But it takes a lot more than just I like something for it to become, part of my identity.
Mm-hmm. So what does become a part of your identity then?
Usually more has to do with how I try and see the world and react in it. At least for now, longboarding is a part of like my identity, but but it's weird. It's not so much the longboarding itself is the identity, but more about like what it represents that I want out of it. That is for the identity, which is more like taking time for myself, working on a hobby I enjoy, setting aside a time where I say no to others. It's using that space for other things that I care more about as far as identity goes. It just happens that I like longboarding, so I use it,
Yeah. Okay. Well, so this is something I've been trying to think about, how like FE is just jumping across the spectrum all the time, looking like scanning, I guess, in the same way that FE scans.
Yeah.
So when do you stop scanning and just focus in on a feeling or focus in on a value or something like that?
So yeah, I mean, if there's something internally I need to work on, I'll focus on the feeling. But like, I really don't use feelings like an FI person does. So like, if I'm like, for me, emotions are signals to something deeper. Like I've seen with a lot of people that have FI, like the emotion is the thing. But to me, the emotion just is something else. So if it's like you're angry, okay, why are you angry? Is being angry the correct emotion for, whatever you're reacting to? So normally, because what is anger? Anger is a signal that something is wrong and needs to be corrected.
Right.
So what are you reacting towards with that? Like that's how I think about emotions, right?
Yeah.
But FI is like, no, I am angry. This thing is deeply wrong. And they'll take that as more truth than I will, in a way.
Yeah. So like, I mean, just the fact that you're asking, is anger appropriate for this situation, is not FI, right? Because FI is just like, feelings are feelings. And I think FI also gets to decide sometimes what they want to feel about something. It's like, do I want to feel angry about this? Will that and then they'll choose to feel angry about it as well, I guess. but not if it's appropriate or not. Just, I don't know. We'll have to get an FI person to
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember one thing that was super interesting. So there was a YouTube video on FI versus FE. And where FE users like myself get in trouble is when we should honor an emotion or a feeling, but we don't because it doesn't go along with the tribe in the moment. So like an example would be like wearing masks, for example. This probably applies more to my country than anywhere else in the world. But I'm sure you're aware of like the whole like anti-mask thing in the US.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So the first time I get home in the States, I went to church with my parents, and nobody in the whole church is wearing masks. I could literally count on like my fingers how many people I saw wearing masks in the whole building. Out of like 100 people. I think there were like 10, right?
Right.
And it felt so weird to me. And through the entire time, I was really debating. I was like, do I put on a mask? Do I not? Because it's like not the norm here, but like it makes me a little uncomfortable, right? So like, and I'm having that, you know, debate in my head of like, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear a mask, don't wear a mask. And I ended up like, and you would think it's simple, like if you're uncomfortable, just put a mask on. Like that's FI, right? Honoring the feeling. But for me, it's like for me, and then it's like, I'm clearly doing something that isn't the norm for this location, which makes me stand out. So like it's rubbing hard against that feminine FE.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I ended up compromising and was like, well, and during the service, I'll wear it. And then when service ends, I'll take it off.
Right.
You know,
I mean, you would never look to yourself to make that decision. You need to look to the tribe to make that decision.
I'm trying to learn it. It's just not easy. Like the default reaction is, when you're with a group of people, just do whatever the norm is.
Right. I guess like you would need your TI to make that decision then, like
right.
Rather than an FI. Yeah.
Which is where I was debating for like literally like 10 minutes in church of like, what do I do? Because I know I feel uncomfortable with this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Have you seen FI users in your life? Do they also feel called out a little bit by your FE sometimes?
Of all of the functions, FI is the one that like annoys me the most.
Okay.
Because I see even if it's Savior FI, if it's Demon FI, I feel like they just insert their own like beliefs when it's really not called for.
Right.
Like, you know, how do you explain it? Like, it's like everybody's agreeing to get pizza, and then one person goes, "I want burgers."
Right.
And then expects the entire group to get on board with burgers, or doesn't. But or like I don't know how to explain it. There was
I'm not sure. Yeah, it's a good analogy.
I have a memory, but like it's so blurry, I can't recall it well enough. But it's kind of like, you know, like that, where my FE would go, pizza's not that big of a deal. Why are you, you know, it's just like inserting itself without context.
Yeah, I see that on the flip side, how TE gets annoyed with TI in the same way. Yeah.
Right. Because TE will just throw everything out, and then TI will want to like narrow shove the one point that nobody cares about.
Right. I mean, so another thing about the DE is a little bit, it's objective focused a little more. It's like you're focusing more on the purpose of the feeling rather than the feeling itself.
I think that's more the TI, or like, just how like because that's more about how I look at emotions internally.
Yeah. I mean, like, okay, so TE, for example, is going to look for the outcome. It's not going to, it's going to use whatever tool it needs to. It's not going to care how the tool works.
Right.
It's not going to care if all it's going to care about is the outcome, that the thing will work, that we'll get it done.
Right.
And TI needs to make sure that no, we don't just get it done. We got to make sure we're doing it right, like doing it from the ground up, right?
Right.
So FI might have like this similar interaction where FE is just looking at the outcome. Like feelings have a purpose. Feelings get people moving.
Right.
I don't know, whatever FE is doing. It's my demon. But like, do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to mobilize people, then sure, emotions play, you know, a big role. You know, like if you're with a group of people, what's the energy level? Is everyone excited, gung-ho? Is everyone more like, calm and quiet? If everyone's calm and quiet, do you match that? Do you need them to get up a notch for whatever reason?
Yeah. So like just being more objective focused on the feeling, like for a purpose, trying to get something to. No, you don't identify with that?
What do you mean by that?
Well, basically the example I was talking about earlier was is TE is looking for the outcome. It's not looking for the process to get to that outcome. It's just looking to get that outcome done and then move on, sort of thing.
Right.
So FE is similar. I've seen that it's like you're focused on the outcome and not really on the process to get there as much.
And with emotions, you mean?
Yeah, with values and emotions.
I mean, it's
like,
kind of like
objectively, what are people objectively valuing? Not really why or the reasons behind it.
Yeah. So like, like if you showed me something, I would be like, nobody cares about that. And that to me is just like a statement. It doesn't really go deeper than that unless I have a reason to explore that. It's just like, I can clearly see people don't like this. So, let's change channels and look at something.
Right. Okay. So then now that we've established that sort of idea, how would FI be different than that? And do you ever do that?
Well, I think FI is more.
Do I like that?
Right.
Not does everybody like that? Right.
Right. Do I like this thing? And either you agree or you disagree, but I like this thing.
Right.
So part of being feminine DE savior is like, yes, I have things that I like I deeply like. But if I don't get the impression somebody really wants to talk about that, I generally don't. So like, for example, I like Star Wars, Avatar, The Last Airbender, longboarding, but I'm not going to sit and explain longboarding to somebody who doesn't ask about it. And if they do ask about it, I'll probably give a very condensed version of what I could versus if I'm with somebody who knows about longboarding and actually wants to, talk about it.
Right. So, I mean, do you see that FI then, like in yourself a little bit on going deep on something and knowing why you like something and the nuances between and hierarchies in that?
I mean,
personal preferences.
Yeah, I don't like, it's not FI from what I see FI people doing. It's like, yes, I can rank every single thing in the order that I like it. And I can even rank people that I know in terms of closeness, priority, and all of that. But at the end of the day, it really just doesn't mean much to me.
Yeah.
It's like,
temporary too. It'll change tomorrow anyways.
Yeah, part of it is like, but it's also like, there are just more important things than Star Wars. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars. I'm a huge nerd. I could talk about it for hours on Instagram with people.
Right.
But it's just a thing that I like. Like, that to me is not identity worthy. I don't know how to explain it more than that,
Right. Yeah.
Like, I would never call myself like a Star Wars nerd or like I'm a this, I'm a that. It's like, these are just things that for rhyme or reason I just happen to be into.
That's really funny, yeah, because I got that too from FI users. They'll judge you for what you watch or what you like, and it's just like, why are you judging me for this? It has nothing to do with my identity.
Right, exactly. Like, if I judge someone, I'll like jokingly judge them. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't know if I could ever date somebody who loved The Office because it's so hideously boring. But like, I don't really care that they like The Office. I just don't want to sit down and watch it for hours. Know. But
it doesn't mean something about them as a person.
Well, The Office might because it's shallow. I'm no, like, right. It doesn't. The fact that like, lots of people like comedies, like, that doesn't really tell me much about them other than they like comedies, whereas I don't. Right. Or you like X, I like Y. It doesn't tell me a whole lot.
Okay, we have someone here. I don't know if this means something to you. What are the results of how you're feeling today?
I don't know what that means. Can you interpret that?
No idea.
I'm feeling good, I guess.
Okay, so then let's move on to TE. Are you ever just outcome focused with the thinking? Just what about communicating your thoughts, the logic? Going back and forth, figuring stuff out with people.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, there's definitely a time and place where I really enjoy like block banging with the tribe to like figure things out, like just using that play energy.
Yeah.
Um, but a thing that I have found that's most effective, at least for me, is to yes go and block bang with the tribe, but then to leave, do like lots of sleep processing, then come back to the tribe and block bang more. But I'll do it on the same point. Like let's get layers 1 through 3 worked out. I'll go back, do 4 and 5. Then we'll do 6 and so like I'm trying to go,
Yeah.
as deep as possible on the one train versus T will go, we're going to talk about this, then that, and then that. But I'll keep it more or less on the same topic as I try and go deeper on it.
Yeah.
For whatever
Looks
it
like
is.
you've offended someone in the tribe here. How is the office shallow?
It's like Parks and Recs, and I don't want to get into that fight today.
All right.
But like, it's just a show that makes fun of everybody for no reason. Like, it's just not, I'll chuckle at it, but it's just not my style of TV.
Yeah. I mean,
and if I want to call that shallow, it's because
not in your FI. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. No, and I just have a vendetta against that at this point. Like, people get so fanboy with The Office, and I think that's actually more what I'm against than The Office. So I just think I don't like the people that fanboy on The Office because I think it's a low quality show.
Yeah, that's really good FE there on the spectrum talking about people.
It's
like
just
this group. I don't like this abstract group of people that my FE has decided exists.
Literally.
Right.
It's just they do the same thing every episode. It's like, great, you made fun of Rob. Tomorrow you're making fun of Tom. Let's move on.
Okay. All right. I mean, I've never seen it, so
you're not missing out on much.
Okay. Well, now I'm gonna have to see it. All right. So you say you go off to the side to sleep process and figure stuff out, and then you come back to the tribe and you'll play with them more with the thinking.
Yeah. So there's two ways that works.
Would have probably moved on by then. T would have probably been on to the next 5 problems by then.
Probably, yeah. But there's 2 ways that I'll play around with the tribe. There's play processing with the tribe where this is where it's going to sound so egotistical of me. I don't think their input is that valuable. It's more just for me to get the thoughts out of my head, and then for me to just springboard my own ideas off of a voice that'll actually like communicate something back, even if I don't think it's wholly useful. And then there's block banging with people where I think what they have to say will spring new ideas for me to go and think about.
Yeah. What about like hearing the voice of the tribe in your head as well, of like hearing their thoughts? This is stupid. This is smart. This will work. This won't work. Do you ever try to ping off of that? Like just even in your own head, the spectrum of.
Yeah, I mean, like if I'll think about something, I'm like, would people like that? Like, nah.
No, that's like FE again. People like that. Yeah.
Yeah, is that not what you're asking? If I FE
no, I'm not have nothing to do with. Yeah, FE is fine. I'm asking about TE in your head.
Oh, what would be TE in my head?
So the answer is no, then I guess.
The problem is I really don't know how TE people think. Like,
yeah.
Like, no, because if I'm thinking about the logic in my head, the logic is literally for myself. The point of going to the tribe is to help me get unstuck in my own thinking.
Right.
Because, like, I don't know, maybe it's part of being demon sleep last, but I'll get, like, stuck in my head and just keep recycling the same thoughts without, like, actually progressing. Mm-hmm. Which then I find if I go and I play process it, it'll unwind all of that, give me new info, and then I can go back to just, thinking on it on my own.
Right. So here we have some, what do people think? What would they say?
Yeah, I try to do that in my head, but I'm just really bad at it.
Right.
Like I've met people who coincidentally are also people that I think are TE who are actually wildly good at it.
Yeah.
But I am not. Whatever I think someone will actually say is not actually the thing they say.
So when you run into TE like that, sometimes do you see it as, I don't know, biased off of the FI? Do you see it as abusive to your TI? Things like this?
Not usually. Like actually most of the time TE is kind of a nice function to like communicate with because they like to block bang that logic.
Right.
You know, so it's like sometimes it's kind of annoying because they don't always want to go as in depth on a single point I do, but you know, you kind of just like accept what they're willing to give, which I guess is more the feminine DE.
Yeah.
But usually it's nice because they at least they, you know, want to problem solve something together.
Right.
And then at that point they're open to solutions. So sure, they're open to 15 solutions, but at least one of them is yours.
Right. And what about when they start giving you advice or something like this? Does it feel like they're entering into your territory? Like, hey, no, this is I get to figure this out on my own.
Well, yeah, but I have the problem with everyone. Like, it's not
Right.
TFI people. I mean, so everyone always has an opinion about something, and my default mode is to just ignore 90% of what people say, especially if it concerns my life, because I just really don't care what you think about my life at that point. But so like if people feel like they need to tell me something, I'll listen to them. Will I do anything once I walk away from that conversation? Probably not, which is why people think FE is a fake function.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. All right, let's move on then to your NE.
NE. Savior NEs are the most fun to speak to. I swear. I love talking to Savior NEs. So like I have Demon NI, and the whole thing I want to do is just find like the one path I want to go down, whether it's figuring out a problem or life or like this thought process, you know, it's just narrowing down the one.
Right.
And so what I find with people that are, I think, Savior NE at the very least, they'll just bring a breath of ideas and just like spray them out all over the place. And I just like take my NI and be like, let's explore this idea. Because if I go, let's go down this idea, they'll bring 10 more ideas. And I'll go, okay, let's choose that one. Then you get 3 more. So it's like almost like I can direct the rabbit hole with them in a way. And it is so much fun.
Well, especially with Demon NI, right? I would think it would take you so long to actually narrow down on a concept, to actually get to that point where like it's solid enough to actually talk about, or I don't know, have something to do with it in reality. And then if an NE comes and is like, oh, that's a nice one, but what about this one? What about this one? It's kind of like dismissing that thing that you worked so hard on.
Yes and no. So usually how it works for me is I get myself to where I narrow down something usually to one of 3 possibilities. Generally, you know, that if I have more than 3, that's like a lot for me, like possibilities. And they're things that I consider reasonably possible. So what I have learned to do in sort of trying to help my NI is if you have 3 things and you have no idea which one is right, look at one, decide which one might be more or less probable, and just run off that like it's truth until you learn otherwise. So I kind of have my own workarounds for like, I don't know which one. But the thing I find with NE is they explore so many possibilities that like my NI says most of these aren't actually like possible given, you know, the sensory out there. So I just look for what I think is possible and run based on that more than
also sometimes
anything.
They'll bring something for just a very short term or very, you know, it's not something that's always going to be viable, really. And that's what NI is more looking for. It's more looking for something, that'll work this time, but what's going to work every time sort of thing.
Well, I'm fine if it works this time, but a lot of like if it works this one time, but I think like it'll do good for this one time, I'm all for it. I'll just know like future reference, I'll need something else. But a lot of times what I see with NE is in all of those possibilities, like NE will be like, how about this? And I'll be like, where did you get that from? That's nowhere near in the realm of possibility. Or like what I consider like an actually likely event to happen in the future. I just look at NE and go, how do you come up with these things?
Yeah. What about in terms of I don't know, just ideas, perceptions that are not realistic, that don't make any sense? Do you ever get that? Do you ever explore those? Do you ever, I don't know, a cow on a moon with, I don't know, with a shotgun?
Right.
I have no idea.
Yeah, that could be NE for you.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That
SD's just, I don't know, blunt axe to what he looks like. But I mean,
yeah, I mean, I think it's hard because I have masculine NI, so it like really wants to narrow down.
Right.
Because I'll have a lot of people, you know, that will come up with these wild ideas, and they want me to answer them like truthfully, but I'm like, in my head, it's like, it's so far off base from reality. I don't know how to engage in this conversation. Like, and sometimes it's almost detrimental to the point where I feel bad about it. Cause it's like, I know you want to have this conversation, but it's like, I just don't know how, because I feel like I'm just encouraging something you think is possible when I don't think it's possible.
Right.
You know, like, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's almost like the NI really like fights that.
Theo, does your NI go on adventures to see if you can gather future shortcuts to valuable insights?
What do you mean NI going on adventures? So, I mean, like so part of, like, for example, part of, I guess, the one nice thing about COVID, at least for me, it has forced me to try and think about my life in like 6-month periods. So like up to, a year and a half, 2 years in advance, which previously I would have never done or been able to, think like try and plan that far out ahead. But now it's like, because of COVID, things are so restricted. I literally can't do less time chunks than that, because it's like the world is just going to be moving in 6-month periods for me. So it's kind of helpful in that sense. So a lot of times I'll try and look down all of the paths I could go, and then try and figure out which one I'd rather go on over the other and do that. I don't know if that answers the adventure question, though.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. What about in terms of seeing the uncertainty in things? Do you ever just, like, I've seen this happen where NEs just sort of kind of get stuck moving forward because there's just so many different, we cut out.
I can hear you if I black out, by the way.
There's just so many different possible options and possible ways to take that they'll sort of stall and look at the uncertainty in each one, sort of thing. I'm really botching this, but do you ever like look for the uncertainty in the possibilities in front of you? Do you ever get that sort of stuckness because of that?
Yeah. I mean, if there's uncertainty, it really usually is in the present with the SE of like, for example, it might be, what is that person going to do? Usually it'll probably involve what other people are going to do, not what I'm going to do.
Right.
Whereas that uncertainty can get really tricky for me if, like, it's almost like chess. If you do X, your opponent could do any number of moves, and you have to take that into account. So taking that into account can be much trickier when you have to, try and predict what other people are going to do. And then at that point, I open up to a lot more possibilities than if it were just me acting and whatever.
What about like focusing on the best possible outcome and things like this?
Well, if it's the best possible outcome, that's usually easier. Although granted, I usually focus on the worst possible outcome.
Yeah, that's an idea.
Yeah, because for me, it's like, if I know the worst possible outcome,
that's right,
would I still be willing to go down that road if it were certain? And if
yeah,
I
so
say
by
yes
the way,
to that,
anyone out there with NI, if you ever want to give advice to someone, even any demon is the worst, just tell them, think of the worst possible thing. Never say that to anyone with any. That's like not...
That is true. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I've seen a few times where I feel like demon NE in particular is negative future possibilities. They still have a wide array of NE, but when it's a demon state, it's almost like the future becomes more negative in a way.
Yeah. So never tell them to think of the worst possible outcome, because that'll just get them stuck.
No. If it's NE, just be like, think of all of the great things that could happen, and then get lost in that la la land. Right.
What about in terms of gathering concepts? Does that make sense to you?
This is one where I personally disagree with Dave and Shan as far as like theory goes, where SE is gathering physical experiences and NE is gathering concepts. So for anybody who reads, they're gathering concepts.
Yeah.
You're not...
I mean, so here's the thing. With NI, you are gathering the concept, but you're building it yourself. You're building your own concept as you gather. NE's not actually building their own concept. They're just taking... They're just gathering. Right.
They're taking... They're like, X... This person came up with that. That person came up with that. Let's see what they do. And just leave them at what the other person came with. Whereas, like, for example, I'll read a bunch of books, a bunch of different theories, and then I'll be like, oh, like he said this, he said that, but like they're kind of saying the same thing, which is this. It's like you say that, and then I realize they're kind of on the same road, just speaking from different fields.
Right.
Which, in a sense, is kind of what I look for with people. Like, if someone has come up with a theory, and let's say they're in medicine, another person has come up, let's say, with a different theory, and they're in business, but they're on this, but they both work in those two wildly different fields. To me, that's like a good theory because it can account for, the chaos of the world, which I guess is really an SENI way of viewing things.
Right. So then again, as any, it doesn't feel overwhelming at all for your NI, as you were saying at first. It's just it's more refreshing and opening for you.
Yeah. If anything, it's actually very much an enjoyable function to talk to because it can just see so much more than I can. I mean, sometimes it's hard to follow the NE because it can be like a little too much with the possibilities.
Also, they're making connections extrovertedly. Like they're connecting things that don't seem connected to us.
Yeah, which is why they make for great memes.
Right.
Yeah. But that's why it's enjoyable. Yeah, I would say because it just opens up the NI a lot more, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that's hard for me is to see that, like, okay, yeah, these two things have this kind of weird connection, but why is that relevant? Why would you even bring it up? Like,
yeah.
So
So that's in that sense. ME can have very wonderful insights and things that I just like wouldn't ever consider.
Yeah, really cool. Do you have anything maybe else that you want to talk about the shadow functions or your?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that's interesting. I assume because it's OP, one thing that might be like shadow wise would be like the masculine or feminine versions of your functions.
Yeah.
And then also the observer decider flip as well. Like single observing, trying to do like the double observing game.
Yeah.
Which I try, but it's so taxing to me. I don't know how deciders actually do that. But one thing that I've been practicing a little bit in life is trying to play the decider game where you make things a little more about people than what I naturally try and do.
I feel like that's the negative side of the decider. It's like not everything is always about people.
True, but like I have a tendency to be like nothing's about people. It's all about it's not the people, it's the emotions. It's not the people, it's the system. It's this, it's that. But like sometimes you're like, it would be helpful if I made it about the people instead.
Yeah, I mean, I try to do the double deciding thing too. I try to learn how to do it and try to emulate it a little bit, but it's just me pretending to be a double decider. It's not me actually.
That's how I feel about double observing. I would feel like deciders on average could be really good administrators. They have to do lots of gathering and learning and then organizing all the information and putting it all together. I'm like I can't. It's so hard.
What are you making me an administrator for? Come on.
Or at least running a YouTube.
I thought you hated The Office. What are you making us all office people?
I really do hate The Office. or even like running a YouTube channel. Like I just feel like business is much more a decider, like friendlier to deciders, because like if you're bad at the observer game, people will fire you. If you're bad at the decider game, people don't usually fire you.
I mean, yeah, you go to jail or something.
Well, that's probably true, but
okay. All right, I'm not even gonna approach this. That's good. We'll leave it like that. That's good. Good points there. But anyways, man. Anything else? Here we have one more question just before we go off. Do you think you have any freakouts about any of your shadow functions?
I mean, kind of just going back to what we've said earlier, sometimes I try and be conscious of, or at least starting to try and be conscious of when my own feelings run contrary to what I think I should be doing as the social norm. So like going back to the example of like wearing a mask, in a place no one's wearing masks, and just trying to at least learn how to look at my emotions and be like, sometimes it's worth honoring those in place of the tribe, I guess, if that makes sense.
So which shadow function is this?
That would be the FI of trying to like learn how to imitate FI.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, thanks a lot for coming out again. It was a pleasure talking to you. Yeah, I hope to do this again sometime.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Have a good one, guys. Thanks for tuning in.